AI-powered storytelling capability to turn numbers into an exec narrative. This is where I'm having a polished BI capability, which is presentation ready, that I can go ahead and present to my leadership team, all the way from, you know, exec summaries to KPI explanations to trend narratives, risk insights, and highlights, as well as my strategic recommendations for them from here in itself. Now look at what you can forecast: your sales, inventory, demand, supply chain, revenue, customer churn, as well as production planning. Look at that list again and notice something. These are all precisely the questions that separate reactive companies from proactive ones. Every one of them is place where knowing a few weeks early changes what you can actually do about it. That's something that I can go ahead and think about from an end-to-end perspective here. Now let's zoom out and let's see the end-to-end AI-based analytics workflow. So what I'm talking about here is all the way from raw data to business action, because this is the slide where every piece we've discussed clicks into a single intelligent actions from an end-to-end perspective is where I need to be thinking about. Now, again, I'm focusing on the word continuous. I'm not talking about something that is static. I'm thinking about something that is ongoing for me here again and again. This is just a simple timeline narrative that I've put for you folks together so you can understand this from an end-to-end perspective, end-to-end capability. This is what an AI, this is what a day in the life of an AI powered exec could look like. Watch the clock with me. Every timestamp that I've got here is real minutes, and the whole thing fits into a time that an exec will take to sip a cup of coffee. At 8 a.m., my exec would sit down, open up their laptop, my coffee is still steaming, and the type one plain sentence: summarize yesterday's performance. No dashboard open, no crazy queries, just a simple question. 2 minutes later, AI flagged declining sales in a specific region. Now, that's not something that my exec was looking forward to. She didn't do any hunting through her 14 different dashboards, hoping to stumble across a problem. Simple question that gave her that insight. A few minutes later, she asks a follow up question: why did my sales decline? And here again, she's now using the power of Gen AI to actually help her with insights. The answer then comes back to her: supply delays plus competitor promotions. Two causes, one internal and one external, each of which in my older legacy models would have taken two separate analysts, a separate data pool, and probably a separate meeting to unfold. Here's my narrative that is all coming together. AI would then provide my exec all of the diagnosis, but also what we can do from the future here in itself. And again, all of this was something that my exec was able to go ahead and deliver in a fraction of time. Folks, what we are going to be doing in this next upcoming section is we are now going to go ahead and look at some of my use cases on where I can go ahead and work with my natural language automation and use cases. So let's pick on each one of them one by one. Let's start with, let's first of all talk about analytics without SQL. The promise on the tin. Ask questions and get answers. If you remember one slide from this whole section, a lot of people pick on this one purely because it's the moment where technology stops being from data team and it starts being from everyone. Look at the questions that I've got here on the screen. Which region achieved the maximum revenue this quarter? Show the products with declining sales. Compare this month's rev to my last month. Which customers have highest lifetime value? Hey, all of these are genuine questions that we really want us to answer. And this is sort of where I start to think about the capabilities of generative AI that I can go ahead and use to get faster decision making, reducing my analyst dependency, truly self service capabilities, higher business agility at the same time. That is essentially what my business look forwards to in this type of an architecture that I can go ahead and use from here in itself. Let's now understand how do I go from prompts to insights. And this is sort of where Gemini works under the hood as a companion that I go ahead and use in natural language to give me answers to all of those questions. Again, what I do is I just put together a prompt in natural language. At the back end, it understands my intent. It then generates an appropriate SQL query. It then executes it, comes back to me with insights plus a summary, including charts and narratives that I could then go ahead and use together to get my end-to-end outcome. And what that means is essentially earlier, what I was doing was I was doing all of those things manually. I was manually creating columns in a monthly ritual of misery, collecting data from different sources, building charts by hand, formatting slides, writing summaries, essentially doing this again and again. Now, all of these things can be automated. Essentially creating automated columns for my KPI summaries, trend analysis, exec narratives, variation explanations, all as a report ready content generated on demand. Notice it's not just charts, it's the narrative, the sentence a human used to have to write explaining why rev moved. That's the part that used to eat my evenings in the past and something that I don't really need to focus on anymore here at the same time. Now, let's focus on AI as my analytics co-pilot. Essentially, a digital analyst that is available to me 24 by 7. If reporting is the scheduled win, co-pilot is my unscheduled one. The answer to every quick question uh, that lands in an analyst inbox at the worst possible minute. Look at what Copilot does. It explains my dashboard metrics. It identifies anomalies. It compares performance period. It uh, gives me recommended follow-up analysis at the same time. It suggests business actions. It's not just answering. It's thinking a long way. Notice the last two ones. It recommends what to do, what to look out for next, and it suggests what to do. That's the difference between a tool that responds and a partner that participates. Now, look at this particular example of conversation that I had here. Why did customer satisfaction decline? Gemini responds back saying response time rose 18% after staff reduction in West region, correlating with a 9% drop in my customer satisfaction. Again, I'm getting insights, so I can very quickly act on those insights to get the most benefited answers that I would really be expecting from here in itself. So that's essentially the power that I'm going to be getting from this particular interface, this particular capability. And again, this is just another example from one of our other customers that I worked with in the past. So you could see from here, I've I've essentially summarized how this particular retail customer got smarter merchandising and inventory. So again, a common classic example in the retail industry, which is where they had inventory shortages due to higher demands, eroding sales and satisfaction. Now, what they essentially did here was they ended up using BigQuery to consolidate their sales inventory and supply chain data into one view: point of sale, warehouse levels, supply lead times, even weather and web traffic, and then added Gemini to recommend replenishment priorities, what to restock, where, and when. All of those things. The keyword is consolidation. The reason retailers get this wrong isn't because they don't have enough data, it's the data that live across 10 different systems. My sellers have now got one single place where all of the data resides, and then on top of that, they ended up using Gemini to answer queries in simple, plain, natural language, which essentially means from an outcome perspective, they now had reduced stockouts, higher inventory turnover, better customer experience, which essentially means increased sales. All of them guiding them into the right direction from here in itself. Again, this is where you would actually start to realize a lot of those business benefits in other domains as well, such as taking an example from a finance analyst perspective as well. Again, folks, all of these examples are just me demonstrating all of these different capabilities. When I think about a finance analyst, they think about many different capabilities, all the way from portfolio monitoring to risk assessment to fraud detection to expense analysis to revenue forecasting. Adding that layer of generative AI on the top essentially means they now can tackle all of these tasks in a fraction of a time. So, faster financial closures, improving compliance reporting, better investment decisions, and most importantly, detecting those frauds um, quite quickly, quite earlier, that could actually go ahead and answer questions in a fraction of a time. That's essentially the power that we are talking about here. Now, moving further, let's take another example for someone in the healthcare industry and how AI powered capabilities help this particular customer. The challenge for this healthcare organization was managing enormous volume of patient operational and financial data, and it was often fragmented across systems that were never designed to talk to each other. Electronic health records doesn't take all of that scheduling system, which doesn't talk to the billing system, which doesn't talk to people. Meanwhile, the stakes are literally the life and death of a human, which essentially means regulatory scrutiny was quite intense here at the same time. Again, with this customer, they ended up leveraging BigQuery and Gemini to analyze the patient flow, capacity, and outcomes to guide better operational decisions. Where are the bottlenecks in the emergency department? Where the bed capacity across network right now? Which patients are trending towards readmission, and they also need a follow-up call today. A nursing manager or an operations director can ask questions in plain English and get an answer whilst it is still important. So instead of waiting for weekly reports that stale on arrival, and crucially, Copilot can shoulder documentation, paperwork that pulls clinicians away from patients. So from their outcome perspective, they got better clinical outcomes, optimized patient flow, and higher operational efficiency and live dashboards that reflect the hospital in the current state, not what was happening over the last weekend. So that's where I'm talking about their real value and problems. Very similarly, I've got another example of intelligence operation and predictive analysis for a manufacturing customer. Again, folks, the key point here from my perspective is please be aware that these capabilities are available to you in your hands that you can now go ahead and leverage in a fraction of a second that you can go ahead and use. So what I really want us to focus on here, as a quick summary of this particular section, is doing that comparison between traditional and modern AI powered analytics. Everything that we used to do in the past was manual. Manual SQL queries are now becoming natural language questions. Static dashboards are becoming AI powered conversations. Reactive reporting is now becoming predictive insights. Hours of analysis is becoming minutes to insights. Separate BI and AI tools now become a unified analytics platform. And for me, the big one is data specialist only became analytics for every single employee. This is where I'm now removing my blockers and now I'm giving that capability to anyone and everyone across the board. Now, folks, the next section is something that is super important because this is now becoming the most crucially asked question for every single organization across the board. But before we actually go and look at the next section, why not actually look at this in action on how I could use BigQuery and Gemini in action? So what I've done is I have just logged on to my Google console, my Google portal. And what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to go to my BigQuery engine here in itself. And within my BigQuery engine, what I've gone and done is I've opened up my studio. Now within studio, I'm going to expand on this one and I'm going to go to my data set that I pre-created for this particular scenario. So I'm going to expand on this one and I'm going to click on one of my tables, let's say order item one. Now, what I can do in this particular table is I can now go ahead and I can go to the Insights tab. I can look at my schema. I can look at my details. What I want to do is I want to go to Insights and I want to say generate insights without publishing. Let me go ahead and select one of our regions and I'll say generate. Now, what I would do is when I'm generating these insights, what you will see here in a minute when my insights are generated, I don't have to go ahead and generate these insights manually. They will automatically go ahead and get generated for me. So let me go ahead and select one of our region. Let's take US Central here and let's click on generate and let's actually get this to go ahead and generate those insights. So you can see here, it's telling me that insights are being generated. You can view them in a few minutes time. So we'll let this actually go ahead and work in the background. What we are going to do next is let's actually use one of my other tables to review some of my other data. So let's maybe pick up on another one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on location as an example. And when I go to this particular table, what you can see is, first of all, I can come in here and I can quickly come in and look at all the different fields that I've got. I can go ahead and I can even select on all of those fields if I really wanted to. I can go to my table explorer, easiest way. I can select it here and I can save. Now what you would see underneath is it's now going ahead and giving me a query that I can go ahead and leverage from here in itself. So it goes ahead and gives me that particular query that I can start to use. What I'll do is I'll click on copy this query, and you would see that this is the query that essentially turns up here. Now, what I can do is I can pretty much go ahead and run this one, or I can also go ahead and expand on this particular query, such as I can say all of these things. I can expand on the query after I've run that one. So I'm going to first of all run this query. And now what you can see is if I expand this a bit, I have got my results that I can go ahead and validate from here in itself. I can view these results in a visualization in form of a chart, which is all now generated by my Gen AI capabilities that I can also go ahead and view from here in itself. Now, let's go ahead and go back to my order item table, the one that we were using earlier in itself. And this time, let's go back to insights. And again, we'll give it a few more minutes. What I want to show you next is once my insights are being generated, it will essentially give me all of those insights in natural language query that I would then be able to go ahead and query from here in itself. So let's actually let this one run in the backend. We'll give it 5 odd minutes to complete that capability. We'll then come back and view this one. So while this is processing, I'll go ahead and talk about our last section, which is about secure scale and also about responsible AI, because these are the kind of things that often gets discussed in my board meetings. So something that I really need to be aware of, and I need to be pretty confident about what I need to do. Now, building an AI strategy, when you start on that one, you need to think about all the way from starting with the problem, not just the tools. I've watched many different AI initiatives to fail. On this one, I need to think about what are some of the key things that I really need to be thinking about. So when I think about creating this particular strategy, I think about essentially starting with my problem. I think more from a perspective of what AI capabilities are available to me, how I can then go ahead and use them. Let's actually look at this particular pyramid. It rests on my trusted data, governed and high quality, because everything above is what it inherited from there. On that, it sits with AI capabilities. The model applied to my real problems, not just the model for my own stake. Above that is my business value, the concrete outcomes every initiative targets, and its all set of service on which my business goals essentially rely on. That's essentially how you really need to be thinking about this particular capability from an end-to-end perspective. Now, again, if you we've gone through this particular capability before as well, so I'm not going to essentially spend a lot of time on the reference model again here, but you get an idea from this particular slide, this particular capability, which is where I'm thinking about all the way on how I look at creating a reference architecture. So again, I'm starting with my apps, to my ingestion, to my storage, to my generative AI capabilities that are built on top of my BigQuery, to actually delivering streamlined decisions that I could actually go ahead and utilize from here in itself. So that's where I should think about my security. So let's talk about that on what are some of the key foundations of a secured solution. The first one I would say will be transparency, knowing how a conclusion was reached. So it wasn't just a black box of decisions that were being made to you. Second one would be fairness and bias, making sure that model doesn't systematically disadvantage a group, whether that's lending, hiring, or care. The next is data privacy, protecting the real people behind the records, every person whose data is stored across every row. The next one is explainability, being able to say why, not just what, because the model said so, is not the answer that you want to give to a regulator. Human oversight. I've focused on this many times today. A person who is accountable for each and every decision. Again, this is where we need to spend a lot of time and effort. We just need to make sure that a human is always kept in the loop and we are doing the things in the right way. Compliance, meeting your legal and regulatory obligations, which are now becoming a lot more serious. So, when you think about an enterprise grade platform, these are essentially all the capabilities that I would need to be thinking about. All the way from IAM roles, all the way from having a capability that I can do data masking, all the way to enabling encryption, both at rest and transit, having policy enforcement controls, and lastly, audit logs that I can go ahead, review, and I can perhaps also send them to my Steam platform that I can go ahead and use again and again on an as needed basis. Those are the kind of things that you really need to be focusing on. Now, some of the best practices on how you can set up your organization for success. These are some of the core things that I think about. First one is defining measurable KPIs. Tie every initiative to a business value. If you can, if you can't measure it, if you can't detect it, there's no point of, having your data sets there. Maintain high quality data. Trusted data drives trusted AI. This is unglamorous foundation under everything else. And it's where the real work lives. Start with pilot projects. Prove the value before you scale them across the organization. What I have seen working a lot with McKinsey Group is domain level transformation is the optimal one. Keeping human in the loop, review, validate each and every AI output that it creates for you. Monitoring the performance, watch from the drift and accuracy over a period of time. And lastly, train on responsible AI. Build an informed workforce because a governed tool is untrained and it could become a potential risk in front of you there and then. So, folks, these are some of the most common type of challenges that you would typically see and my recommended approach from them. Let's take one by one. Poor data quality. How you can get around that is strengthening your governance and data management. Fix the foundation first because AI on bad data just produces confident errors faster. Low AI adoption. Invest in training and change management. The best tool in the world is worthless if people don't trust it. Privacy concerns. Apply your security guardrails, your access controls, your encryption, those type of things. Shadow AI usage. People quietly pasting companies' data into random public tools. Something that you need to govern, you need to understand, and you need to act on them. Unrealistic expectations. Start with focused, measurable use cases. Under promise and over deliver rather than over promising things that are quite unrealistic and delivering disappointment to your management. Those are some of the key things that I would be thinking about here in itself. The next thing is what that will essentially deliver for you in terms of tangible outcomes is all the way from delivering key metrics from 8 hours to 20 minutes, faster decision making, lower operational cost, higher team productivity. These key metrics help you to track your decision speed, your cost savings, your report generation, productivity, customer satisfaction, as well as your revenue growth there in itself. Now, what you see on the screen is, from my perspective, a practical adoption journey that I have successfully implemented with many customers. So something that I wanted to share with you all as well. The phase one is about assess, understand your priorities, your goals, your readiness, where the pain that's worth actually solving, and honestly, is your data good enough to actually solve that problem? Phase two is then modernizing. So using capabilities of BigQuery to consolidate your data, breaking silos. The third phase is enabling your AI capability. So enabling your Gen AI using Gemini layer for reasoning on top of the data that's now cleansed. Phase four is scaling. So expanding across multiple departments, taking the pattern that worked in one team and spreading it deliberately. Phase five is optimization, refining, innovating. And then lastly is essentially where you keep innovate more and more. You never actually become reactive from there in itself. Now, where I see the industry is more heading towards is more towards my multimodal analytics, more from a perspective of using a lot more autonomous agents that not just report, but they act on your behalf. Voice first BI, literally asking your data out loud, get an answer, no dashboards, real time decision making. So insights at speed of events, not at nightly batches, predictive and prescriptive, moving from what will happen to what should we actually do. And lastly, enterprise co-pilots that every analyst look forward to so they don't become my bottleneck. Now, folks, these are the five ideas that I want you to take away from here. AI amplifies analytics, BigQuery scales analytics, Gemini acts as that key enabler for me on all of my conversation, and automation further accelerates my reporting and insights, and AI brings all of this together, uh, not only just to answer my questions, but also to build on top of these particular capabilities from here in itself. So that's essentially the key aspect that you should go ahead and think about from this particular instance. Now, what should you do next from here? This is a potential action plan that you can take from this particular webinar. Number one, identify one high value use case. Start with the clearest and the most problematic power. The next one is to assess your data landscape. Know what you have, where it lives, and how good it is, because that's what will help you. Third one is pilot your conversational analytics, measure your business outcomes. And lastly, once your MVPs are working, you then scale successful implementations right around from here in itself. Now, before we sort of go ahead and wrap up our session today, let's also go back to our lab here. Let's go ahead and let me go back to this one. Now you can see I earlier clicked on generate without publishing, and you can see from here in itself what it actually did for me is it gave me all of these insights. Now the good thing is for each of these insights, if I expand on this, you can see there's a SQL query that is built underneath it. So what I can do is I can pick and choose these different queries, and I can see what is the underneath SQL query. So I don't have to do any of this. I just have to click on this one. And what I can do from here is I can pretty much just say copy to query. I can then either run it, I can save this for the future, or I can schedule it. Again, earlier back in the day, this was something, a capability that I had to handle on my own, something that I don't have to do it. I just let Gemini to use its capability and help me out from here in itself. And then again, on top of that, I can just run visuals. I can look at the JSON code that supports it. I can look at the execution details, all of those right from here in itself. So this is the real value that you get with Gemini as you go ahead and use that one. Now, what you can go ahead and do from here, these are some of the other resources that will be shared with you. So go ahead and look at each of these resources, and that will help you a bit further on your learning journey. Now, these, from my perspective, are some of the most important questions that you should actually look on asking your business stakeholders, because these are the kind of questions that will help you to gain more insights from your business stakeholders. And this is what will help you to get the most right type of an information that you can actually go ahead and use from here in itself. So that's what I want us to be thinking about, that we have for us across the board. So folks, with this, I would first of all like to thank you all for joining in this session. I hope this was informative, and I hope you took a lot of insights on how you can modernize your analytics and you can go further from there. Thank you so much for joining in this session. And what we'll do next is we'll take a few questions that you had sent us in the chat, and we'll look forward to answering them. Could I please have those questions?
Thank you, Ankle. That was incredibly insightful. Now, I know everyone's looking forward to the Q&A session, so go ahead and start putting your questions into the questions panel. And while you do that, I'd like to give the presentation rights over to Ifla, our product marketing person, who's going to introduce you to some of our fantastic promotions and webinar-related courses.
Thank you, Tracy. Insightful session. I believe everyone must have learned something new today or would have been able to brush up their skills around Google Cloud technology. So firstly, I'm excited to announce that Netcom Learning is now an authorized training partner for Google Cloud, making us your go-to destination for cloud skilling. With this milestone, we are proud to offer comprehensive training across the three leading cloud technologies globally: Microsoft Azure, AWS Cloud, and now Google Cloud. So we, Netcom Learning, is your one-stop shop for cloud skilling. I would also quickly like to take you through some of our hand-picked resources, which we think will immensely help in accelerating your Google Cloud skilling journey. Well, this document here that I'm presenting has been shared with you all in the handout section of GoToWebinar panel. You can download this document and access all the resources and browse all the offerings we have curated for you. So first up is the list of our recommended courses, which we feel will best suit your learning journey after attending our masterclass. So all these courses here are hyperlinked. Feel free to go through them post-event and check out the course descriptions and prerequisites and the value it can add to you and your team skill sets. Additionally, we have curated a blend of resources, including our upcoming and on-demand events, as well as some informative and educational blogs. So you can make the most of these resources to gain extensive knowledge on the Google Cloud topics they cover. Also here, I would like to inform you that today's masterclass session is being recorded. So in case you want to refer back to any of the topics that were covered by the trainer today, we'll be sharing the recording link with you through emails, and also you can access the link here on the handout, so that you can revisit the session and learn at your own pace. Now, apart from our virtual sessions, you can also catch all the relevant updates related to IT and business training on our social media handles. So please feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest updates. Our official pages and channels are linked here on the icons. Finally, if you have any suggestions regarding the topics you would like us to cover in our upcoming webinars and masterclasses, please don't hesitate to send us a direct message or leave a comment on our social media posts, or you can just simply email us at google@netcomlearning.com. We would definitely try to come up with the sessions on your suggested topics. Thank you once again for joining us today. You guys have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks so much for guiding us through that information, Ifla. And now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our question and answer session. The first question is, if Gemini is generating insights from BigQuery, how can we ensure sensitive enterprise data remains secure and isn't used to train public AI models?
Great question there. And that's a common concern that I'm hearing from every second exec as I'm going and working with them. So let's